You're holding your baby, trying everything you know. You rock, whisper, bounce, kiss their forehead, and somehow it only gets worse. Then the other parent walks in, reaches out, and your baby melts into them, like that was the answer all along. In that moment, it doesn't just feel frustrating, it feels personal. The parent being refused feels invisible. The parent being chosen feels trapped. And both of you can end up asking the same painful question. What does it really mean when a baby only wants one parent? Most parents have seen some version of this. The stiff little body, the desperate reach, the crying that says, not you, the other one. And because it happens in such emotional moments, it's easy to hear a message that may not actually be there. You start wondering if your baby is more bonded to one of you, if you did something wrong, or if this is the beginning of some lasting preference that will shape your whole family dynamic. But what's really happening is often much deeper, much more normal, and much more revealing than simple favoritism. Because when babies reach for one parent over the other, they are not usually making a statement about love. They are showing us how their developing brain searches for safety when emotions get too big to handle alone. And once you see that, the whole moment starts to mean something different.
The common explanation is simple. Babies just pick a favorite. People say it casually all the time. Maybe it's the parent who carried them, the parent who stays home more, the parent who is softer, calmer, more fun, more patient. And yes, on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But it's incomplete in one very important way. It treats your baby's behavior like a popularity contest, when infant attachment behavior is really about regulation. In other words, when your baby is overwhelmed, tired, scared, overstimulated, or separated, their brain is not asking, who do I love most? It is asking, who feels most familiar, most predictable, most likely to help me come back to calm right now? That difference matters a lot, because babies don't reach for comfort the same way adults make thoughtful choices. They use attachment behavior. They move toward the person their nervous system has learned to trust in a specific moment of stress. That's why a baby may laugh and play happily with one parent all afternoon, then cry for the other one the second they get tired. It's also why only wanting one parent often shows up most strongly during transitions, like bedtime, illness, new places, loud gatherings, or after a long separation. Those are not random moments. Those are the exact moments when the attachment system gets activated. So if your baby clings hardest when they feel most vulnerable, that is not proof that one parent matters and the other does not. It's proof that your baby is using a very old, very intelligent survival system. And once we understand that system, the behavior starts to make a lot more sense. In attachment science, caregivers serve two powerful roles. One is a safe haven, the place a baby turns when distressed. The other is a secure base, the place a baby uses as emotional ground while exploring the world. That means the strongest attachment signs are not always the sweetest or easiest ones. Sometimes they look like crying when you leave, reaching for you when scared, or calming faster once they are back in your arms. From the outside, that can look dramatic, but developmentally, it often means your baby knows exactly where safety lives. This is why separation anxiety can be so confusing for parents. Around the later part of the first year, many babies suddenly become much more clingy, much more upset by strangers, and much more intense about leaving a familiar caregiver. Not because the bond is getting worse, but because the baby's mind is getting more sophisticated. They are starting to understand that you still exist even when they can't see you. That sounds like a small change, but it is huge. It means your baby is no longer just reacting to the present moment. They are reacting to your absence. And because they still have almost no sense of time, "I'll be right back" means nothing to a nervous system that feels the separation as total. In fact, strong, healthy attachment can sometimes be linked with separation anxiety that appears earlier or feels more intense for a while. So when your baby cries hardest for one parent at the doorway or during a handoff, the deeper meaning is often not
rejection. It is recognition. Your baby has identified that person as a major source of safety. But that still leaves one big question. Why this parent? And why now?
Here's where the science gets even more interesting. Babies can form attachments with more than one caregiver, but they do not experience every relationship in exactly the same way. Very early on, they begin learning patterns. This voice belongs to this person. This touch feels like that person. This face, this smell, this rhythm, this way of being held, this timing when I cry, this tone when I'm overwhelmed. Over hundreds and then thousands of tiny interactions, babies build expectations. Not complicated adult thoughts, but simple emotional predictions. When I feel like this, what usually happens next? And who usually helps me best? That is why one parent may become the fastest comfort parent in a certain season, while the other becomes the best play parent, the bedtime parent, the morning parent, or the new place parent. Babies are astonishingly sensitive to repeated patterns of response. These responsive back and forth moments do more than comfort a child in the moment. They help shape the baby's brain and teach them what to expect from relationships. That does not mean one parent is superior. It means your baby has developed relationship-specific expectations, and those expectations can be different with each caregiver. Even sensory familiarity can matter. From very early in life, babies recognize caregiver characteristics like voice and touch. So when your baby insists on one parent, they may be reaching not for the better parent, but for the more neurologically familiar route back to calm in that exact context. And the deeper twist is this. Those patterns are not fixed. They can shift as caregiving routines, developmental stages, and emotional needs change. Which means this moment may be telling you less about permanent preference and more about the emotional map your baby is building right now. Emotionally, this is where parents need the most relief. If your baby is only asking for your partner, it does not mean you have failed some invisible bond test. And if your baby only settles with you, it does not mean you are doing attachment better. Often, it simply means your baby has linked one parent to a certain kind of comfort more strongly, for now. The healthiest response is not competition. It is translation. Instead of hearing, "I love them more," try hearing, "I've learned something specific about how safety feels, and I'm still learning it with both of you." That is also why forcing the issue rarely works well. If the rejected parent starts reaching only in the hardest moments, the baby may panic more, not because that bond is impossible, but because the emotional demand is too high. Secure attachment grows through repetition, in tolerable moments. Diaper changes, floor play, bath time, carrier walks, a predictable goodbye ritual, a silly song before naps, a calm, consistent response when the baby is only mildly upset, not already overwhelmed. Over time, the nervous system learns, oh, this person can help me too. That said, there is one careful caution worth holding. If a baby seems impossible to soothe with either caregiver for extended periods, shows a sudden dramatic change in connection, or intense distress is interfering with everyday life for more than a passing phase, it is worth talking with a pediatric professional. Not because clinginess itself is a red flag, but because context always matters. And once you stop seeing this as a verdict and start seeing it as information, the next step becomes much clearer.
So, what does it really mean when your baby only wants one parent? Usually, it means your baby is not measuring love. Your baby is revealing where comfort feels quickest, safest, and most familiar in a particular moment. That's not a family failure. It's an attachment clue. And in many cases, it's actually evidence that your baby is doing something developmentally healthy, seeking closeness when overwhelmed, building trust through repetition, and using a caregiver as a safe haven while their emotional world gets bigger and more complicated. The real goal, then, is not to make your baby show perfectly equal preference every day. The real goal is to help your baby build more than one secure bridge back to safety over time. And that happens slowly, through consistency,
warmth, and enough repeated moments for trust to spread. So if you are the parent being chosen, try not to carry guilt. If you are the parent being refused, try not to carry shame. This phase is not the whole story of your bond. It is just one chapter in the way your baby learns who helps, who returns, who understands, and who feels safe. If this changed the way you see that painful little reach for one parent, stay with the channel, because one of the next questions parents ask is even more surprising.